Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. We're here talking about our next tree of the week, and we're here with Raven, and she's got a very, very interesting tree as well. So take it away.
Yay. So first I want to show you, I'm going to start off with some books
Okay.
that I got. So you just talked about this in your tree, but
Oh, yep. Under the witching tree. I love that.
she is very expensive and I even got her used, but I've heard great things.
Oh,
And
amazing. Amazing.
yeah, good. And then I also got Celtic tree
Ooh,
rituals.
that's nice.
I've only flipped through this, but I like it. It gives a lot of guided meditations, which I really like, meditations to do like with the tree. Um, yeah, and it also associates like the Ogum and all. You don't have this one, do you?
No.
Nice. So, anyways, I'm excited to get into that one. And then I also got this one.
Ooh, that looks, I've heard about that one.
Have
What do you
you?
think about that?
I haven't heard of it. I also have just kind of flipped through it. I just got these like 2 days ago. But
Uh-huh.
I like it. I like it when there's not when it doesn't give you like specific words and stuff to say. We've talked about this before. I mean, you and I seem to not really follow like say these words in this order at this time, like this kind of stuff. Like you and I kind
Mhm.
of do our own thing and we think that stuff can be good for inspiration. But I like it when it gives you an idea and then just like lets you kind of run with that idea. And that seems to be what this book is. So I'm not totally sure yet, but look at it. And then this one, something in my eye. This one I'm very excited about.
Ooh, I have that one.
Do you?
Yes, I have that one. Mormon.
Yeah.
Morman.
Morman.
Yeah,
This thing is hefty.
it is. And
760 pages, but it's
it's a
good.
wealth. It's a wealth of information.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
it
I
is.
like that they break it down by like groups too, which
Me
is
too.
nice. Anyways, yes. So those were my books.
I love those. Awesome. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing.
Yes, yay. Let's see. All right, so we are doing fur today.
Nice. Very nice.
Get closer. Ugh. Okay.
Ooh.
So we're doing fur. This is what it looks like. So, it is part of the pine family. There's a lot of trees in the pine, a lot of like genus and species within the pine, but it's part of the pine. The genus is Abies or Abies, not really sure. And there are a lot of species. Some of the most common ones, we have the European silver fir, the balsam fir, white fir, grand fir, noble fir, and Pacific silver fir. So, its native range is kind of like a bunch of different areas. So, North America, we see this a lot in like the northern part of the US. So, Pacific Northwest. And then we have the Pacific Silver, which is like coastal mountains of the Northwest from Alaska. So, Alaska, some Canada, Washington State, and Oregon. The Nobles, Cascades, and like Coast Ranges. The balsam is Northeast US and Canada. We have some in Europe kind of sprinkled throughout different species, but mostly the alba. Asia also has some different ones that we haven't talked about before, the Siberia and South Korea. And then there's also some in like Japan, China, the Caucasus Mountains, and then some in North Africa too, like in Morocco. So kind of just scattered all around. They do prefer cooler climates, mountain slopes. Like they can grow on flatland, but they grow really well on mountain slopes. Moist forests, like wetness in the air, lots of water precipitation, so some rain, and then well-draining soils. Okay, so species identifiers. So the biggest identifier is that the cones stand upright. I feel like we've talked about this with another tree. I can't remember what it was, but they look like little candles on a cake, like they stand upright. And um, most of the other conifers, their cones hang down. Think like a typical pine tree, right? Like the cones hang down, but this one stands up.
Ew.
Joop. The needles are really flexible and they're flattened. So if you try to like if you take a pine needle and you roll it in your fingers, it rolls because it's like cylindrical. But firs are flat, so you can't really roll them. And they're also like really rounded tips. They're not sharp. Like pines are really sharp. And then the line is firs are friendly and flat. Friendly meaning that they're not pokey, and flat. That's how I identify fir, is the firs are friendly and flat. Um, and then we have the typical white bands. So most firs will have two white bands on the underside of their leaves, like two little columns, if you will. And this is like one of the easiest way to tell, especially if you can't necessarily like feel the like needles for some reason. If you can just look, that's an identifier. And then they also attach directly to the twig. They have these little suction cups, little teeny tiny suction cups at the end of each needle. And so when you like take the needle off, the suction cup comes with it, right? So it's like it's very smooth. And it's not like that with a lot of other confers where even if you break off the needles, there's still gonna be like little needle stubs. It's pretty symmetrical in shape. There's a strong central leader, meaning like you can pretty much see like the main like log all the way up the tree. The branches are relatively horizontal. You can see that that's not always the case like with the Fraser fir, but they grow pretty like horizontally, like parallel to the ground. And then they look like a nice little pyramid, like very pointy at the top. And then we have resin. So if it's a relatively, especially if it's a younger tree, but this is true for all trees of all ages, the bark is pretty smooth and gray, and then it becomes like this kind of more reddish brown kind of color as it gets older. And also, there's resin blisters. So if you pop one of these little blisters, the resin flows out, which is pretty cool. And you can kind of even see like where people have popped them before.
Ah,
And the resin is supposed to smell phenomenal, like really, really good. Some
nice.
resin doesn't really have a lot of smell. Some of it does, but this is supposed to smell really good. Okay, so other names, true fir, because there's I didn't mean to say pine, I meant to say something else. But there's some trees that are called firs that are not true firs, like the Douglas fir. We talked about the Douglas fir before. We'll link it if we can find it. And but it's not a true fir. And so it can be just called true firs. The noble fir is called the king of Christmas trees, and the Fraser fir is called the queen of Christmas trees. Silver tree because of that like whitish those stripes on the bottom. Tree of immortality. Oh, I have that on there twice. Tree of eternal life, evergreen of life, tanne. So tannenbaum. Tanne means fir and baum means tree. So tannenbaum means fir tree, which I didn't know before. That's pretty cool. Now I have that song stuck in my head though.
Me too. I've got it in mind immediately. Okay.
Oh, Tannenbaum. Oh, Tannenbaum. And the mountain evergreen. So let's talk about some history and lore. So it can be seen as like the tree of endurance. So across Europe, Asia, and some other places as well, evergreens are like seen as symbols of life, right? Because they preserve through winter. They don't die off like other non-evergreen trees. And so firs are kind of associated with that. So it's not just firs, but evergreens in general are kind of seen as like survival, immortality, hope during hardship, things like that. Then we have the Wild Hunt. So in Germanic folklore, evergreen forests, including fir trees, so again, not specifically to fir, but fir is like included
Part
in
of
the
it.
story, are said to be traveled by the Wild Hunt, which is a spectral procession of spirits, ancestors, and or supernatural riders that are said to cross the winter sky. So the Wild Hunt is just like this group of like supernatural beings that travel sometimes with other supernatural beings, sometimes by themselves, and they like just move around a lot in the wintertime and also can potentially fly across like the sky and the horizons at this time. And so during winter nights, people were not supposed to go into an evergreen forest because the hunt might be passing there. Travelers could be led astray. And also because of this, we see almost like a Samhain mythology where like the boundary between the worlds are thinned. Okay, so we have a story by Hans Christian Andersen. So not folklore, but still pretty cool. So it's called the fir tree. So obviously this is a shortened version of the story, but a young fir tree grows in a beautiful forest. The tree is healthy, surrounded by sunshine, birds, animals, and older trees. Yet it cannot appreciate any of it. Instead, it constantly thinks, what comes next? The older trees are larger than me. The lumbermen praise certain trees and cut them down. So the young fir becomes fascinated when it learns that some trees become ships, even that sail across the oceans. It wishes to be a ship. The fir spends its youth wishing it were older. It envies taller trees, more mature trees, trees chosen by lumbermen. The birds try to tell it how beautiful the forest is, but the tree doesn't listen. It believes its real life has not even begun yet. One day, the tree sees large firs being cut down. It learns that they are destined for great adventures. The young fir becomes even more dissatisfied. It dreams constantly of future greatness. Eventually, the fir is chosen and cut down. At first, it's terrified. Then it discovers that it has been brought indoors. It is decorated with candles, ornaments, sweets, gifts. For one glorious evening, it becomes the center of attention. Everything it dreamed of seems to have come true. The fir finally feels triumphant. Then the celebration ends. The next morning, the tree expects even greater wonders, and yet instead the decorations are removed and it's carried into the attic. It is forgotten for a time. Now it spends its days remembering the forest, the birds, the wind, the sunshine, the simple life that it once despised. Only after losing those things does it recognize their value. Eventually, the discarded tree is taken outside. It's chopped up and burned. And as it burns, the fir reflects on its life and realizes it spent nearly all of its existence longing for the future rather than experiencing the present. And so the story ends not with triumph, but with regret.
There's a moral to that story in there. I closed my eyes to listen to
Uh,
it while you were.
yes, okay.
There is definitely a
Um,
moral in
There's
there.
definitely a moral in that story, yes.
Good one.
Yeah. So then we have the fir tree and the child Jesus. So in some Christian folklore legends, it tells of the fir growing among larger, more impressive trees when the Holy Family is fleeing into Egypt. As the story goes, the fir was small and unremarkable, and when soldiers approached, the fir bent its branches downwards and concealed Mary and the infant Jesus beneath its boughs. In gratitude, Christ's child blessed the tree. It would remain green all year, it would forever symbolize eternal life, and it would become a favorite tree during Christmas celebrations. And so this tale appears in like a bunch of different variations throughout like Germany and Austria and the Alps and all different places. So then we have the fir and the forest spirits. So in parts of Switzerland and Bavaria, old fir forests were believed to be houses of spirits known by like a bunch of different names. When discussing them like cohesively, they just call them the Alpine forest spirits. But a woodcutter, so the story goes in like this specific one. A woodcutter entered an ancient fir grove during winter. He heard singing among the trees, but found no one. Following the sound deeper into the forest, he encountered a luminous woman dressed in green who warned, take only what you need. The woodcutter ignored her and cut, typical man, and cut more trees than necessary. When he returned home, his sled was found empty and all the timber that he had vanished. And then in some versions, it's also said that he becomes lost for a year and a day after that.
I know. He doesn't listen to the woman. I love that.
They
This is
never
what
do.
happens to you if you don't listen to the woman.
Uh,
Especially if she's
so then
luminous, which all women are.
Right, yes, exactly. Then we have the French Alps. So in some traditions, the silver fir groves were believed to be the Fae, gathering places to the Fae. So there's one story that talks about a shepherd who falls asleep. I couldn't find like the exact story, but I found a lot of like mentions of it. Essentially, a shepherd fell asleep beneath a silver fir, and when he woke up, he heard music. And when he looked around, he saw a ring of dancing fairies, never a good sign. And then he joined them, as we know you should not. But he joined them, and he thought that as he was dancing and partying, only a few hours had passed. But when he finally goes back to his village, years had gone by.
That's the way
Typical
with the
Fae.
Fae. Yep,
Yeah, that's
that's
the
what
way.
happens. Exactly.
Never join in on a dancing ring of Fae.
No.
Yeah. Then we have the Blessed Woman. So in Bavaria, Tyrol, and parts of Austria, there are stories about like mysterious woman known as the Salige Frauen or Silesian Fraulein. So these were
Outline.
Fraulein, yes. These were like women, essentially, beings who lived in mountain forests and appeared near like bodies of water, so springs, meadows, and then like old groves, any type of old evergreen. And sometimes they taught spinning, sometimes they taught healing, sometimes they taught just general household skills like staining. But it was believed that they vanished once people became greedy or disrespectful of those places. And then some places say that hunters who hear singing or bells coming from deep in the forest, they are not supposed to go in there. They're supposed to like, it said that they'll encounter one of these, and they're not very nice anymore. Then we have the wild folk, the wild Lute. So throughout the Alps, there's these legends of the wild folk, which are described as hairy mountain dwellers. Ancient inhabitants of the land, guardians of animals, teachers of forgotten knowledge, just like a bunch of different types. Similar though, a hunter who hears music, laughter, or strange voices in the forest. And then the story goes that there was a hunter who heard that, follows the sound, discovers a hidden gathering of wild folk, and he's allowed to stay if he's respectful. Then he'll receive the knowledge. But if he mocks them or is like rude, then he becomes lost in the forest and can't get out. Rightfully so.
Yep.
And then we have the Tannengeist, uh,
Geist.
Tannengeist. Yeah, I don't know, German. The fir spirit, though. So Tanne is fir tree in German or Tannenbaum. And so sometimes there's myths that say that a specific Tanne, like in a specific town or something, can't be cut. And sometimes if people like woodcutters or whoever try to cut these specific trees down, there's stories of their axe breaking, strange weather coming in like thunderstorms, all kinds of stuff. So then we have like construction and woodworking was pretty commonly used. It was pretty straight grained, which seems like that makes it easy to cut and like sand and stuff, and it's pretty lightweight. So in Europe, it's been used for like houses, barns, beams, furniture, water wheels, even bridges. In North America, used for canoes, shelters, still to this day can be used for utility poles. Any type of like interior woodwork, so like t stuff you're gonna have in your house, like tables and stuff, because it's like really pretty. Boxes and containers. It has been used throughout Europe and Asia for like sacred purposes. So resin was collected from like those blisters in the bark.
Mhm.
And you can burn the resin. Branches and needles were burned, used often to just like purify homes. Oh, and then burning fir resin before winter was sometimes considered protective magic. That way, going into winter, you are protected.
Nice.
And then we have just some general like winter solstice customs. So fir is one of the trees that is an evergreen that's brought inside for like solstice. reasonings for Christmas trees, for Yule logs, that kind of stuff. Branches and the wood was associated again with like surviving death, returning of the sun, renewal after darkness, all the stuff that we've talked about. And these other trees that are used are like pine and spruce, but fir is like the very typical, like naturally very pointed type of tree. And so it's kind of seen as like a favorite because a lot of the other ones are much bushier. Okay, so medicinally, parts used are the needles, the resin, pitch, bark, young branch tips. So it is an anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antiseptic, all real good stuff, expectorant, decongestant, analgesic, rubefacient, antioxidant, and diuretic. So, needle infusions have been used for like nourishment. Oh, I did not say this. It's high in vitamin C. It's very high in vitamin C. And so you'll see people who will buy like or not, you can harvest them or they sell them at like my farmer's market where like the tips of new needle clusters are cut and you can infuse those needles and it's like really high in vitamin C. Good for the lungs, general strengthening, like lung strengthening and stuff, stomach strengthening. If you're using the steam is good for congestion, colds, any type of like sinus discomfort. You can use it as a salve for skin injuries, sore muscles, any type of joint problem, or just like resin incense, which gives us like, again, the respiratory effects, kind of like the steam inhalation. And then I just give you like three of the most common ones. So we have the Bosmia, which is the balsam. This is like the most medicinal North American firs. All of them have medicinal properties, but this one is like the most. And so it's used off like if you're buying fir from like a holistic store, like an herb store, it's probably going to be this one. So aromatic resin, respiratory support, and really good for skin and wounds. We have the alba, which is used for respiratory conditions, also documented use of it in baths, like for a long time, people have been soaking in it. And then the grandius used by like indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest for properties mentioned before. Okay, so lots of goddesses that are directly related or like some that are somewhat related. Sometimes I want to include ones that are somewhat related and sometimes I don't, but I'm doing it this time. So we've talked about all of these ones.
Yeah.
So we have the Salige Frauen. We have oh, I put the wrong name there. What was that one? Ah, no, I don't remember. Anyways, so these are all things that we have talked about before. I
Yes.
can't remember the Alps one. And then we have the tree spirits, we have the Tannengeist, we have the wild folk, all of whom we've discussed. Not really goddesses, but like entities
Yes.
associated. And then we have the Perchta, who's a winter goddess in Austria, Bavaria, Germany, associated with midwinter, the 12 nights of Christmas. I found one place that talked about her associated with that, so I included it. The Wild Hunt, domestic order, and then also spirits of the dead, which is pretty rad, I think, because to my knowledge, which is not very vast, but a lot of these kind of like darker deities, like winter and spirits and dead, are not really associated with domestic order. So I feel like that's interesting. Not like order within the house, you know?
Mm.
And then we have Holda associated with snow, nature, fertility, the dead, woman's work. And there are some stories of her in evergreen forests and a couple of her in like fir forests, but not directly like associated. We have the Leshy.
Mhm.
So we've talked about this before, shapeshifters, protector of wildlife, tricksters. Not really like a spirit, but associated with like the evergreen forest. Okay, so magical associations. I have earth, of course, because we have roots. We have also like the mountain habitats. Mountains feel very earthy to me. Also air because of its shape, very like triangular, and also like the smell of it. It's very potent smell. Season is winter, obviously evergreen, so it like lives through the snow, lots of winter solstice traditions, persevering through the darkness feels very wintry. Planet, I found Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn for wisdom, boundaries, endurance, and then Jupiter a little bit for like growth and optimism. I don't know. I could see it, I guess, but I kind of like Saturn for it. Cap for perseverance, discipline, endurance through the darkness, and then Tarot, the Hermit, because obviously solitude and wisdom. Strength, kind of tying to that, but for like resilience. And I also found the Star, which is kind of like the same reasons, but it's almost like the rebirth after that, right? It's like renewal after the darkness. So I could
I
see
love
that
it.
too. Yeah. So some things you could do. Door blessing, of course, because it's a tree and pretty much all trees are can be used as door blessings, whether in your home or outside.
Like lots
Um,
of plants can be.
yeah. You can make a protective sachet with the fir needles. Um, Also like using during times of big transitions, like when you need that perseverance, that like remaining steadfast in spite of like everything around you dying. Smoke cleansing, you can burn dried needles, you can burn the resin. Floor wash, which I love. You can steep the needles in hot water or like some other cleaner like vinegar if you're able to use the vinegar on your floor. And then you use that for cleaning the floor. Or even just kind of like you like wash your floor and then just do this as like a little topper. That's usually what I do. I love a good floor wash.
Mm-hmm.
Winter meditations. So, what remains alive during difficult seasons, perseverance, surviving hardships, and then ancestor work because it's an evergreen, and evergreens are associated oftentimes with like continuing throughout generations. So, you could put it on like an ancestor altar. Then we have solstice or like seasonal magic. So you can like light a candle beneath a fir tree and then meditate under the tree or think under the tree or journal under the tree or just bring in like a branch inside and reflect. And then you can also offer it offerings. So offering water, a song, a poem, like any type of moment of gratitude because the trees deserve our offerings, whatever that may be.
Always.
And that's it. Yay.
Yay, I loved it. That's great. That's
Fur.
amazing. I love that. I love the fur.
I do like furs too.
Like during my
So
time period
interesting.
too. Just so
Yeah.
lovely.
We don't have a lot of true fir. I mean, not like immediately right here. We have a ton of oak and a ton of Douglas fir. Um, but I'm sure there's some firs around here.
Yeah, I know.
Hmm.
Well, that's nice. Like and subscribe below, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation, and we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.